Many times, car companies recycle innovation and bring it back years later, or a feature that was available much sooner than you thought. Here are three examples of that, and then we're going to do three features that used to be found on every single car that should come back. All right, starting off this list was the first car to use a turbo. It might come as a bit of a surprise to you, but the first ever turbocharger was patented in 1905 by Alfred Bucci, originally intended for use on a marine engine. Just for reference, superchargers predate turbochargers, with the first supercharger being made somewhere around 1878. The turbocharger was patented in 1905, but it would take 10 years to build a working prototype. The turbocharger was invented to overcome power loss. It's worth mentioning that the prototype wasn't very reliable, though, and would be looked at by numerous people. Each person had their own way of making a viable turbocharger. The first commercial application of a turbocharger was in June of 1923, used on a diesel locomotive, eventually finding their way onto Sawyer trucks in the 1930s. The Swiss company offered turbos on the BXD and the BZD engines. The first cars to use turbochargers was the Oldsmobile Jetfire and the Chevy Corvair Monza, both cars released in 1962. Up next, first car computer. According to Google, if you type this in the search bar in Google, this is what you get. 1968 Volkswagen Type 3 is the first car to have a computer with Bosch D Jetronic, electronic fuel injection. Can anybody think of an older car? Going once? Going twice? Sold. How about Duesenberg Model J? Timing box. I know technically not a computer, but the timing box has been described as being like a computer. The box is an intricate arrangement of 24 planetary gears hooked up to the dashboard with working lights. One light would come on every 700 miles to change the oil. Another light would come on every 1400 miles to check the battery water level. Automatic chassis lubricator every 75 miles. The system was completely mechanical, and it was all done on timing. Okay, the last innovation that we're going to talk about today that came out sooner than most people might think is the self-parking car. According to Google, 2003 Toyota Prius was the very first self-parking vehicle offered for sale to the public, but wouldn't you know, the technology goes back even further than that. Brooks Walker would develop a unique style fifth wheel concept in the 30s. The spare tire would drop down from the rear of the car and jack up the rear of the car. The car would pivot right into the space. The patent described the device as a lifting and transversing device. Walker would demonstrate this feature for Life magazine in 1935. The fifth wheel deployed at right angle to the car, and it would lift the car using hydraulics and pumps. The system was only installed into a handful of cars. One car was a 1933 Packard, another one a 1951 Cadillac. I know where the 53 Packard Cavalier is with it. I saw it with my own eyes a year ago, and I begged the guy to let me do it, but it's buried in a collection. And I'm still interested. So if you're watching this, I'm definitely interested in doing that. Walker's fifth wheel design was revolutionary, though it never really took off because of the complexity of the unit, and apparently it took up all of the space in the trunk. So anybody that had this feature, yeah, you got to park your car easier, but it did come with some caveats. Also, the price tag. It was said to have been $178, but I'm not sure if that was $178 in 1933, because if it was in 1933, that would be equivalent to $4,423.27 in the year 2025, or if it was in 1953, it would be about half at $2,153.65 in the year 2025.
And if traffic was bad, the parking problem was impossible, just like now. So one California genius disproved the simile useless as a fifth wheel. His fifth wheel aimed sideways, and with it you could sneak into the tightest hole. power steering? Well, somehow it never caught on. Why not? We'll never know. That's ancient history.
Smaller, at Piedmont, California, an inventor has developed something to soothe the motorist's headache by putting the spare tire to work. He calls this device the Park Car and says it can be installed on any model. Watch how it works. Taking power from the drive shaft, the spare tire swings the rear end into the clear. Then he just retracts the spare, backs into the street, and away we go. It's handy for parking in inaccessible garages, too. Here's a narrow driveway, but with the spare tire put to work, the car can turn a complete circle in its own radius, and parking is simple indeed. Even the worst driver can make the garage without denting a fender with the aid of fifth.
It's an absolute pity that that didn't catch on. It seemed like a stellar idea. All right, now moving on to some features that used to be found in cars that are no longer on cars. We're going to start with this concept called freewheeling. In the 30s, there was this thing called freewheeling. When it was engaged, it disconnected the engine, transmission, and drive line. So you could run the engine and transmission and everything will get lubricated properly. It was kind of sort of like putting your car in neutral, but there wasn't any connection between the drive line and the rear wheels. The engine was disconnected from the rest of it. Sorry, engine and transmission was disconnected from the rest of it. It was a stellar feature in regards that you could save money in gas. When you got to the top of a big hill, you could put it in freewheeling and just coast. The problem was back in the day, brake technology wasn't the best, and brake fade was definitely a big issue. But they could bring that feature back now in a big way because, like, okay, think about it. They have this stupid start-stop technology where they, you know, the new cars, they stop at intersections, red lights, anytime that the car is at idle to quote-unquote save fuel. But how much fuel is that actually saving, really? But if they brought back freewheeling and you got to the top of a big hill and you put it in freewheeling, or you just shut the car off and you would just coast down to wherever, and then whenever you needed to start the car again, you could start the car. You could save a lot of gas doing it that way, but you need common sense to use it. Like with modern cars, most everything has power brakes. The power comes off of a vacuum pressure. The vacuum pressure goes away whenever you take the when you take the engine out of it, because the engine's creating the vacuum pressure. But if you could figure out a way to make like override with manual brakes, that would be awesome, because back in the day, cars had manual brakes and you always had brakes, no matter if the engine was going or not, because they were mechanical. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that freewheeling should make a comeback? Moving on to the second thing that I think that they should bring back. I think they should bring back bench seats. Not everything needs to have a sports seat. I had an 88 Lincoln Town Car Signature Series with those absolutely stellar pillow side velour seats. Still the best seats of any car that I've ever owned. Years later, I bought an 89 Town Car Signature Series that was even more loaded than the 88 car that I had, and it had the leather pillow side seats. Those were the best seats that I've ever sat in, of any car that I've ever owned, I should say. They made some stellar seats in the 70s. These two cars were in the 80s, but those seats, you know, they were considered bench seats. I'm using air quotes, you can't see me. I put 100,000 miles on my 88 Town Car Signature Series, and I drove it. I was a kid. Well, not really a kid, but maybe it was the second car that I ever owned, the 88 Town Car Signature Series. And I used to get in trouble all the time for going 80 miles an hour around this bend, this horseshoe bend, and I never once slid out of that seat. I think that's the argument for sports seats. They have to have some sort of bolstering so that holds you in place, but I never had any issue with any bench seat that I ever had. Even in cars with vinyl seats, you do slide around a little bit, but it's not bad. All right, moving on to the final thing. I think they should bring back vent windows and or cal vent. I think I would much rather have the cal vent. That is my favorite feature on old cars that they don't put on new cars, because you don't really need air conditioning with it. It's a scoop that pops up from the hood, or you can have two footwell vents that open up on the sides, like the cutouts in the fenders. It is the best feature that they don't put on cars anymore. It takes all the heat out. Now, a lot of people don't tell you this, but a lot of old cars, they have a lot of heat in the summertime because it comes through the firewall. All the heat from the engine gets put down into the footwell, but you can extract it really easily if you have those footwell vents. It's what it was there for. Best feature. If they couldn't bring back the cal vents or the footwell vents, then definitely vent windows, because it was such a cool feature. And getting back to the 88 Town Car, the 88 Town Car had vent windows, but it operated differently than what you would think. Instead of it opening on a hinge, you would push the button, the window button, and the first small triangular window would go down, and then the big window would go down. It was just a really classy thing. Bonus. This isn't really a feature, but an engine. I think that they should bring back the flathead design. Now, hear me out. A lot of people say that the flathead is not very efficient because of the way that the air has to make right-hand angles inside the engine. But if they could figure out a way, keep the flathead design, make it more modernized, because to my knowledge, I don't think they ever made a flathead in the modern design. And what I mean by that is when we switched over from flathead to overhead valve, we went from long stroke, small bore in the flatheads to big bore, small stroke in the overhead valves. Not all overhead valves go by that formula, but I can't think of a single flathead engine that has a smaller stroke than bore. If you guys can think of one in the comment section, I think they should bring it back, modernize it like that, big bore, small stroke, but I also think that they should turbocharge it. There is a guy on YouTube that builds turbocharged flathead engines, and they sound absolutely incredible. Take a listen. Sounds like the future, doesn't it? Anyway, now it's time for Would You Rather. Two scenarios today. In the first scenario, of all the features taken away from cars, which one would you like to see brought back? In the comment section. The second scenario is, what options / features do you know of that came out way before modern time gives it credit for? Also put that in the comment section. Now it's time for Name That Tune. First person to get both the name of the band, song title, and the lyric that comes next will have their comment pinned to the top of it.
And it was hard, so hard to take. There's no escape without a scrape.
I didn't sing it in the right tempo. Anyway, thank you all so much for coming out and watching this one. If you'd like to get in touch with me, shoot me a comment in the comment section below. Or you can always send me an email at @yahoo.com. Thanks again for everything that you guys bring in the comment section. Until next time, toodaloo!